Good morning. Welcome back to part 2 today of soul retrieval. We talked a lot last week about why you can experience soul loss, what causes soul loss. Oftentimes a piece of a soul can be either lost, it can be stolen, or it might still be departed from you and living in fear somewhere, still stuck in the event of the trauma, the emotion of the trauma that occurred that caused the soul to leave originally. And it's important to bring those soul parts back to you. We did have a question last week from one of our audience members about how can you prevent soul loss from somebody stealing your soul. We talked about how somebody can sometimes...
Can you like LoJack your soul?
I don't know. I suppose, sort of, yeah. But
Sorry, go on.
That's an old term too. I don't think people use
LoJack.
LoJack anymore.
Can you add GPS finding to your
go.
soul piece?
Now you're a little more current. So sometimes a piece of the soul can be lost because somebody loves you just so much, and you know how sometimes you'll see somebody and you might say, I love you so much. I have to have a piece of you in me. I have to keep you with me all the time. That was weird. And so you need to be able to protect yourself from that happening. And it's important to be responsible with your energy. This is a different topic we could go really deep into. I'm just going to caption it a little bit for right now.
Over the top.
But it's important to be responsible for your energy. In Reiki classes, I always talk about doing the white light, the purple light, and the mirror shield. You can watch our previous live talk on that if you haven't seen how to protect your aura. But that's one of the steps of it. But on top of that, you should also...
protection.
Yes, exactly.
It's cool.
And so you should also periodically, fairly frequently, maybe 3 or 4 times a week, call your energy back to yourself from wherever it is around the world. I just did this yesterday for myself. I maybe don't do it as often as I should, probably. But 3 or 4 times a week you should really do where you just really visualize and state out loud, because when you say something out loud it's powerful, and say, I call all of my energy back to me now. I call all of my energy, wherever it is around the world, back to me now. And if you do that soon enough after somebody has stolen that piece of your soul, and they always do it inadvertently. I mean, there are situations where it was not inadvertent, but the majority of the time.
So when I found that little piece of your soul that I had taken and I didn't mean to, you're not mad at me for that?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Exactly. I forgive you.
Thank you.
But you can,
So I have to give it back.
but if you do it soon enough after somebody has done that, then you'll actually call your energy back to you before the soul loss was actually completed, before the piece of the soul is gone away from you so far that it's lost. And
so it kind of gets like siphoned.
exactly.
And so you can cut it off, or if you cut it off early enough, it comes back and then you're okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Which is a part of why in shamanic cultures, after trauma, they always do the soul loss, soul retrieval within 3 days after the trauma, because it's much easier to bring that soul piece back, help
When
you to
it's
be
fresh
full and whole.
Okay.
So same
That makes
thing,
sense,
if you're
yeah.
doing it within 3 days of somebody taking that inadvertently from you, then you're calling the energy back. You can do that without a shaman needing to do it for you in
Nice.
those types of instances, and feel your energy back. You'll feel a huge rush of energy if you're sensitive at all to energy. You'll feel a big rush when you call that energy back to you. You'll have more energy to get through the day, and you're basically pulling it back from everybody that had cords to you, or inadvertently took a piece of you, or any of those things where it's pulling your energy. It brings it back into you, so you have that wholeness. With soul retrieval, just to recap a little bit from last week, soul retrieval, when you do soul retrieval, it really helps to you discard beliefs that have limited you. So whenever there's a soul loss, whether it was a traumatic event that caused part of the soul to fracture, it helps you to be able to survive the trauma, when the soul loss happens. But when that soul has left you, it creates a block within your field. So within each of the chakras, if you have an issue specifically that you're trying to heal, that relates to the soul loss, you'll have a block in that chakra, and that block has limited certain beliefs. So we talked last week a little bit about fear being one of the issues, or not being able to form solid relationships because of trust issues. There are so many different things. Not being able to feel like you can forgive yourself if you make mistakes. Feeling a strong weight on yourself because you have to be perfect. You just can't make mistakes.
And if it's the soul, it's not just emotional or spiritual concepts. I mean, it can manifest, you were saying, like even like disease and
Yes.
and well, like your sensitivity to sunlight, or actual sicknesses, or I mean,
Exactly.
cancers even probably.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Not feeling like yourself. If you just feel like you don't feel whole, you don't feel complete, any of
Stable
those
kind of a
things.
thing,
Yeah. Feeling like you're missing something and you don't know what you're missing, or feeling depressed, or anger issues. Any of those things can be a result of that soul loss, having part of you that's not gone. So you can learn a whole lot more about that by watching last week's video if you didn't already see it. It's good to check out that one first and then check out this one. But it helps you to discard those beliefs that has limited you, and then to be able to rewrite your soul contract, which is so very powerful.
And you said you would get to that. I really want to find out what your soul contract does exactly.
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to talk about 4 chambers,
so-
and that'll be the second
So
chamber.
this is the process. So this is the process of how you go do an actual soul retrieval.
Exactly,
Okay.
yes. So when I do a soul retrieval on somebody, there's this profound healing process that happens. It occurs within the soul piece first, because you want to make sure the soul piece is healed before you put it back into you.
Yeah. Otherwise you're just bringing trauma, right?
Exactly, which
Yeah.
is not good. So when the soul piece comes back, it's healthy, it's bright, it's vibrant, it's beautiful, it's whole and complete within itself, and it brings gifts to you too, to the gifts. So it doesn't bring the trauma back. Instead, it has turned that trauma into a healing that is a very powerful thing. It brings back gifts, power, and the healing energy that had been lost when the trauma occurred. You can imagine anytime you think about a trauma that happened, when you look back on it, you can recognize that there was a loss of energy that happened afterwards. There's a period where you don't feel like yourself afterwards. There's you lose
Whether it's
some.
emotional exhaustion or physical
Yeah.
actual exhaustion, you're always tired after trauma.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
So it brings back all of that energy that was lost.
Oh,
It clears
okay.
the block out so you can be full and whole on achieving towards what your destiny is.
Nice.
We touched on a little bit last week that soul loss can derail your destiny at times.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, because you don't have all of you to get there, kind of a thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
So when I do a soul retrieval, the first thing I do is an illumination. That's the first step as a shaman that we do with pretty much any process, is an
Step 1,
illumination.
illuminate.
Yep, no matter what it is.
So you
Step
can
1,
see-
illuminate. Step
so you
1.
can see,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, I remember working with my elder shaman. Illumination.
Yeah.
First thing I learned in shamanism was...
That's an illumination.
Exactly.
Because you want to be able to see.
Exactly. And the illumination clarifies and clears and purifies within the aura. It shows you where the block is with the illumination. You know what the issue is you're trying to heal. You talk to the client to figure out what is it that they're trying to clear through. Do they have an issue with their attitude towards money? Are they having problems with fear? Are they having problems with not accepting themselves? Maybe they aren't able to find love in life. Any issue, whatever it is. Or they're dealing with a disease and they're trying to find the core of it, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So we go through and we check in the chakras, figure out where the block is, and that's going to give me a little bit of a clue of where this soul piece is, what the soul piece is doing with based on what chakra I'm kind of going into. So I kind of go in through that chakra, opening it up, clearing, discharging a lot of the blocked energy.
Because the chakras each do different things,
Absolutely.
depending on where they're at, of course.
Yep, and I
Okay.
teach a 9-week chakra course because there's
Oh.
so much to the chakras.
So we'll glaze over that part.
I think we've done a couple, I think we did a 2-part video on the chakras a while back in our archive too.
Really?
And,
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Wow.
But you can check that out if
Right,
you want
yeah,
more
yeah,
chakras.
Yep.
And so we'll do the illumination, which clears out the block, lets us have some information, clarify, heal the person, because I want the person on the table to be much
At their-
more whole
at their
in a
best
good
state.
place.
Yeah, their best
when I-
state right
because
now.
The soul retrieval is a pretty deep process.
yeah,
And
makes
so then
sense.
after the illumination, I go in psychically and I take a journey into what's my sacred place. I have
Okay.
my power animals that are with me, that are
Nice.
our protectors in the sacred place.
Nice.
And then I go into the 4 different chambers, which is
Okay.
what you've been curious in
I'm
asking.
curious, yeah. Well, you
So
keep
the
saying all
first
these
chamber.
things. Yeah.
The first chamber is the chamber of wounds, and within the chamber of wounds, that's where I find the soul piece, because the soul piece was injured. It was in a trauma.
Oh,
And so I have to go to where the trauma was.
so it's, while it's wounded, it stays in the chamber of wounds.
Exactly, because this soul
makes
piece
sense.
has been lost. It's been holding on to that trauma to keep the person saved and free from it, but it's been dealing with it, and it kind of festers, what was
Yeah,
going on with
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Sometimes
'cause it's a
it'll
wound.
fester with
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Exactly. Sometimes those whole pieces are really afraid. They might still be living in the fear of the trauma. And I have to really coax them out and talk to them a bit and let them know that it's okay. I have to listen to their story, which is the key part of the chamber of wounds. They need to talk and express what they were
Express, yeah,
feeling.
yeah.
Whatever the trauma was that happened, they need to get it out because they've been hiding so long. You can imagine if you think about something that was traumatic that you went through, or something that's a deep emotional thing, and if you hold it in and you never tell anybody, that
Oh, it
grows.
gets worse, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Until
yeah.
it kind of like boils
Yeah,
over.
Yeah, it
So-
festers and it gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
And eventually, the idea of talking about it is almost
It's scary.
traumatic in itself.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
easier to just like push it
Yeah,
away.
like it never happened.
So sometimes these soul pieces, I have to like find them. They might be hiding because they're afraid, coax them out. My power animals will help them. Oftentimes in the chamber of wounds, the soul piece might trust my animals more than they trust me at first, because I mean I
can see
would.
that. Well,
I
it's probably,
understand.
it was a person, it was a person that caused the trauma.
Oftentimes,
Yeah, and I would, who doesn't trust animals over people?
Yeah.
I do.
And so
Animals don't
the
lie.
animals will work along with me to talk to them. So we listen to their
Nice.
their stories, and I'll tell my client as they're on the table, I'll let them know what the story was so that that can be expressed, so they can recognize. And it's the first journey towards healing is talking about
Talking
it.
about it, yeah, so the words come out and it's a little lighter and easier to deal with already.
Exactly. I
Okay.
listen to their story,
Putting
share
words
it
to it,
with my
yeah.
client,
Yeah.
and that facilitates the first step of this real deep healing process. Just expressing it, letting them know that it's okay. Sometimes you have to tell the soul piece that trauma is not happening anymore, that life has continued on, and it's okay to let that go, that we're going to heal that through these
Make you
next
feel better.
chambers. And then
Nice.
they build a little bit of courage. We come out of the chamber of wounds. They're
Nice.
at least half the time, if not a little more, the soul piece will like to ride on one of my big cats or my spirit
Well,
animals.
yeah,
They'll
I mean,
ride
if
out
you
of
had the
chamber of
opportunity,
wounds.
of course, why would you not?
Yeah. and
Now, when you say that, you say writing, and I think of a person.
I see them as little people. So they're smaller than a regular
I
sized
don't think
person.
that's PC, man.
I don't mean it in that way. I see them as a miniaturized
they're
version.
small
of
people. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, I hadn't really put that together until I was talking to you now. Or my cats are just really,
Really
really big,
big.
and the
And
people
so
look
people
small.
are small,
on it.
yeah.
But I think because it's just a piece of the soul, that's why
It's
it
a
looks
s-
smaller. But it looks like a human form.
Okay, because you
most of
say
the time.
piece, and I just think of this white like circle. I just, whenever you
like
say a
this
soul
thread,
piece,
yeah.
it's just like a chunk of a soul that you would like,
see that.
like a chunk of a gem or something.
Yeah.
That's what, and then
And-
you're like writing out, and then all of a sudden I'm seeing this white thing, and suddenly it has legs, and it's like, and I'm like, wait a minute, how is it? Wait, what?
Yeah, yeah. And
So they're
depending
little
on
people.
Depending on what level I tuned in on, I could see them as a light, but usually I tend to see them
As-
in the form they were when the trauma occurred,
Oh.
which helps me to see their story as well as to hear their story.
Interesting, because I would go with, because the soul, it would be, that's how it saw itself in that moment,
Exactly.
when the piece left.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense, all right, I like it.
If it
Yeah.
was a soul loss in this current life for somebody, often they'll look a bit like the person that I'm dealing
Right.
with. If it's a soul life from a past life, then they often look very different. I might have a female on the table and it'll be a male soul piece that's coming back,
Yeah, oh, 'cause
whatever the trauma was.
You don't know what you were in the past life.
Exactly.
You could have been anything.
Exactly,
Any
yes.
race, creed, color, sex, whatever.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And often I see more into the level of the soul. As you know, sometimes I'll see people in physical reality, and my opinion of what they look like is
Yeah.
vastly different
Vastly.
than what they actually are.
She's like, did you see the tall blonde? And I went, no, I saw the little dark-haired lady. And she's like, and it's the same person.
Yeah, that was in
She's
physical therapy in Phoenix, and
And
I
you
kind
know
of
what?
argued it, and
Yeah.
then the next week, the same person
Yep.
was there again.
And I was like, there she is. And Angel was like, yeah.
Yeah,
oh,
she's a blonde.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I guess I see the other form
Yeah,
of her.
she was seeing something that wasn't there, and I don't, she's either hallucinating, which is possible, I'm just kidding, or she saw like her, I don't know, energetic self, or her soul
Exactly.
self, I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's not what was standing in front of me, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's seeing that level of the soul. All
Okay.
of us have this beautiful, brilliant soul light that's within us, and I often see that level of the soul, and it can look vastly different in any number of ways from
Yeah,
the person
yeah,
that I
yeah.
see. But that ability, I think, helps me in doing the soul retrieval, because I can follow that soul thread and seeing those soul pieces from many different lives. And
Yeah, so
Um,
that makes sense why they'd be different, so yeah, okay.
so within the chamber of wounds, oftentimes the soul piece will look dirty, their clothes may be tattered, they,
Oh, wounded, they look wounded,
Exactly.
okay, yeah, yeah,
I might
yeah.
see the actual physical wounding that had happened within them, and sometimes it's a little healed over. It varies. It's
Yeah,
for
yeah.
each one, depending on
Depending.
the trauma that soul piece is still living in.
And where it's at, in its growth or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So I coax them out through the chamber of wounds once they've told their story, and
Hey, right.
when that's exactly, I have actually had a couple that did that. Like it kind of made me laugh.
That's cool, man.
Yeah. And so then we go into the second chamber. And so
Yeah.
as I talk to them about entering the second chamber, that's the chamber of contracts. Which
Oh,
is
that's where the contract
fun
comes
one.
in. Okay,
Yeah, this
nice.
is such an important and beautiful chamber, because we write our soul contracts throughout our lives. There's part of our soul contract that we write when we're on the other side, and we decide, what are we going to do with this life? What do we
Okay.
want to be, have, achieve, all of that. We set up some of those things that we
Guidelines?
hope for.
Okay.
Yeah, not total detail, but
Okay,
some of those
okay.
things. But also within our soul contract is that part, because our soul, as we talked about last week, is the repository of everything we've lived through our
Right,
lives.
right.
And so it contains those things that we wrote into our contract in past lives as well.
Oh,
And
okay.
oftentimes, if we are going through something that is traumatic, let's say you're losing somebody that you really love, and you're hoping you don't lose them, they're just very sick. And so you say to the universe, or you say to God, that you just want them to get better, and please, oh please, if you'll make them better, I promise I will blah forever and ever.
Right.
That gets written into your soul contract forever, not just
Oh.
this life.
Like forever, forever.
And when you say that, you're
Oh.
saying that into the universe,
And-
and it's a real thing.
And you think it's, the forever is until I die. I mean, that's, I
Yeah.
think, what most people mean.
And all-
Forever ends at dying.
life.
At dying. That's when forever stops
And
being a
s-
thing.
And so often people say forever, and in 2 years, they don't even remember what they said.
No, of course not.
And so they're not necessarily abiding by it anymore.
No, not at all. Well, and their perception on everything has changed. I mean,
Exactly.
people, they never know, you never know what your perception of the world and how you see it and what you think about every aspect of life is going to change as you go through these years.
Exactly, and that's where we touched on last week about with a soul contract with one girl who had, I did a soul retrieval on, and she had felt like she couldn't make any mistakes, very self-critical,
Oh,
didn't know how
right,
to
right,
love
right.
herself,
Yep,
because and so
She
many
made
people
the-
struggle with
she-
self-love.
Yeah,
but-
she made the mistake and she we were saying
Yeah,
that
in a past life, when she was very young, she made a mistake. She accidentally died because of it. It was a longer death. She saw the pain that was inflicted on her family, and she said, "Oh my gosh, I will never ever make a mistake again. I never want to hurt anybody that I love. I won't do this."
I was wondering when we talked about it, I'm like, how would that, I mean, yes, I mean, everybody wants to, I don't ever want to cause that pain is the thought.
Mhm.
But the words in your head would most likely, for a lot of people, would be, I will never make a mistake like that again. And
But she was a very young soul piece, and
Right.
so her idea was, "I will never make a mistake at
again,
all
right, again, of course.
and I don't
because
want to
you
hurt
don't-
people."
Of
And
course.
so when she came into this life, she was very self-critical within her mind and never felt like she was measuring up to
And
what
that's
she
how,
needed
so it
to
followed her
do.
with the contract.
Exactly, and then she
Okay.
felt like she couldn't have relationships close to her because she was afraid that she would hurt
She
them,
couldn't,
because it's not possible to
Right.
not mistake. That's a big part
Right.
of what our journey is.
When you can't
So-
trust them because it has to be what you decide to be right.
Yeah, so we go into that more
Yeah.
depth last week if you haven't seen it
yeah.
yet. And, but within the contracts chamber, you're able to rewrite the contract. So I'll walk in with the soul piece, and I can pull up in my, it looks like a big Rolodex, sort of,
Nice.
of contracts. I'll find the person's contract and look at the part that is
Henry, Mark, Tom, what's your name again? Oh, right, sorry.
And so I'll look at the part that relates to them, specifically with the part of what we're trying to heal and,
That's
to-
for this situation.
Yes,
And
and
the
so
words
I'll
that
see
were-
the words that come up for, usually I see, it's like a parchment looking paper with this gold ink.
Neat.
And so I'll be able to talk to the client, I'll let them know what the current contract says, and if
Which
they would
was,
ask if they would like to change it.
I will never make a mistake again.
Yeah, something
So,
along those lines,
Okay, yeah.
And so if they want to change it, then I will, along with the help of my spirit animals, delete that old wording, and then I'll.
Is there an eraser for gold pen?
There he is, yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is.
That's pretty cool.
And so then I will ask them if they would like to create the new wording, because you always need to fill in where you deleted, because there's space there,
course,
something
yeah.
needs to get filled in.
Yeah,
So
you
I'll
can't
ask
have a
if
void.
they would like to fill in the wording, or if they'd like me to suggest wording, and usually people have me suggest the
You-
wording.
yeah.
So I go into the
I would
thing,
think.
am in that mode of spirit, and I ask, along with the soul piece, what we should write, and I'll always run that wording by my client.
It makes sense that they would have you do it though, because, I mean, if that's always been an issue for you, when you're in it, the idea of what would be the best wording to fix something, I would imagine that the
It's hard to see if you have an issue there.
Yeah, if that's your issue, you would be the last one that you would want to ask of, how do you make this so that it works great for you? I don't know, it's kind of my issue. So, yeah, that makes sense, you'd have an outside observer do it. So,
Yeah, so in a
that's nice.
situation that's similar to that, I would write something about, like that, well, I could hear the soul piece with that one, or actually it was my power animal that was talking to the soul piece and
Nice.
having a conversation with the soul piece about how there really are no mistakes. There's mistakes, and so you can
Mistakes.
retake the, whatever it is you're doing, and so.
It's like a photo shoot.
Exactly, and so you do take 2, you do take 5, you
Nice.
take 10,
Yeah, whatever
however
it
many it
takes.
takes. And that's the journey of life, and it was
Oh,
fascinating to
yeah.
watch. My leopard was the power animal that was talking with the soul piece about it as I was
It
thinking
still
of the
doesn't
wording.
trust you.
And it was close to me.
Okay.
And so, in listening to that conversation inspired me for the wording to add into the contract about it being okay, and to love yourself, and to recognize that it's good to be able to trust people,
Yeah.
that you are worthy of love. That's often something that needs to be written into contracts of people, is you are worthy of love. Oftentimes it ends up coming down to an issue of love, regardless of what
The
starts
issue
as
is, yeah,
there.
yeah, of course, yeah.
And
If
so-
you can just add enough love into a situation, it pretty much fixes most things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I run the wording that comes to me by my client, and then I write it into the contract with that beautiful gold ink, the big quill pen.
Nice.
And
Is it like the feathery with all the thing
is,
and the
beautiful white feather
sparkly and yeah, nice.
and so It doesn't have sparkles on it.
What?
It
Oh.
shimmers a bit, I suppose.
That's what
But
that's
yeah,
sparkles. That's
true,
what I'm
that's
saying.
true.
Yeah,
I
knew.
just
I knew
realized
there was shimmer. There's
that's
no way you're writing in gold ink and the pen doesn't shimmer.
That's true, you're right.
I mean, come on.
You're right. And so, so we put that in, and by doing that, this brings, by rewriting that soul contract, it really brings a freedom to assist coming back to achieving their destiny and to be able
Nice.
to reach their full potential by clearing out any of those negative beliefs and contracts that are no longer needed. They're able to call their energy back into themselves, to have the freedom to experience the love, to experience the gifts and the talents that are already there.
Especially like from a soul level, I would have to think that like when there's a defined thing that is like set in your soul, that everything that starts your thought processes
Mhm.
all come from a place of whatever that
The
issue.
contracts are.
Yeah, whatever that contract, right.
Yeah,
So
and
it-
most of the time people aren't aware of their soul contracts at all.
no, especially if it happened in another life,
Mhm.
because it's all you've ever known.
Yeah.
So in this life, all you've ever known is to feel like that. So I
Mhm.
mean, how do you know to not do that? You can't.
Exactly.
So interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And then so once we have filed that back away into the Rolodex, we move out of there into the Chamber of Grace, which is this beautiful area within my sacred space is this big forest. And so the Chamber of Grace is this big, like, beautiful fountain right in the center
nice.
area of this forest, and which seems a bit odd in the middle of a forest, but somehow it feels like it just fits well. There's a couple of benches alongside it if a soul piece needs a little bit of coaxing before they go in.
I know now where they got the idea. You must have seen Magicians, or vice versa. Magicians heard about this. The show Magicians, they have fountains in the middle of a forest,
Mhm.
and it's how you travel to different places.
Oh, I
And
didn't
so,
know that.
yeah. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
yeah. Each fountain goes somewhere else,
Interesting.
and so you have to know what fountain to go into, and blah blah blah, and
Wow.
yeah.
Oh,
So
that's
yeah.
fascinating.
So when you said that, I was like, oh, Magicians. Sorry.
And that actually brings me to the next point, is we actually travel into the Chamber of Grace.
Oh, nice.
Through
Okay,
the
so
water.
that's a doorway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what. Yeah,
fascinating.
that's what.
Oh,
Exactly.
funny.
Yep.
Magicians is a movie?
It's a show.
Oh,
It's on
a show.
Sci-fi.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
a
think I've
sci-fi
seen
show.
it.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's pretty good.
Well, so
It's really good.
so this beautiful fountain in the middle, it has parts that come up in the center of it, and the soul piece and I will dive into the fountain. Some of the soul pieces will be ready to just dive in because they've come out of the wounds chamber, they've come out of the contracts, they're feeling much better, they're ready for the Chamber of Grace, and they'll dive in. I've had some on occasions that just want to kind of like put a toe in first, and then the other toe, and it's like, whoop, and
Baby
they're down.
steps.
And,
Yeah.
and then once they go into it, we suddenly are transported down underground of the forest into this big open cavern that's like a big marble bath. That's a huge marble pool underneath, and it has all of this area. It's very well lit, even though it's underground. And it has fountains that are on the walls. It reminds me a bit of like an Arabian bathhouse.
It's illuminated.
It is. It's
That's
illuminated.
what happens.
Yes.
They turn on the lights when you do the illumination.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, that might be.
That's what I'm saying.
So within the Chamber of Grace, this is the area where the soul piece becomes healed fully.
Oh, nice.
So
Oh,
they-
because of the water, in the water of the, because water heals, right.
And they
Gotcha,
they
yeah.
become clean and whole,
Nice.
and their clothes are restored to something that's beautiful and vibrant. They are shining.
Like
and-
with the whole fairy godmother thing, they ding, and they're tattered and it's
yeah,
amazing
yeah.
clothes and all
Exactly.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's as though they get a bath.
okay. So
and then
you're the fairy godmother in this case.
I just facilitate the energy, but
But yeah, well, so does fairy godmother with her little wand. She just does. Okay, sorry.
and so it's
Anyway.
just beautiful to see these soul pieces come to life and to be so vibrant and made so
That sounds-
whole
sounds
within here.
awesome,
If they
yeah.
had any wounds physically on them, they're immediately healed. And I'll sometimes watch the soul piece as they discover that. You know, they'll recognize that they feel so much better, they look better. If it's been a while, they might look down and
You're
like,
like,
oh my gosh, it's gone. I
healed,
feel
yeah.
good finally. I'm ready to go back to the person that I belong with. And it completes this beautiful part of the journey of healing. And
That sounds
it's
very
just,
cool.
it's beautiful to see. And then it's through that, as we go through that process, that the healed soul piece is transformed into radiant wellness.
Nice.
Oftentimes they'll have this radiant glow about them. And then we travel through the water.
Okay, and, oh yeah, that's chamber 3, right?
Chamber of grace.
Okay, that's the third one.
And so the fourth chamber,
Okay.
which is the last chamber that we go through, the fourth chamber is the chamber of treasures.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Everybody
so
loves gifts.
exactly. And so the soul piece has been gone for a long time, and through the transformation that the soul piece has done, there are always lessons and gifts that we have from the lessons. There's
Okay.
always those things that we can learn from any lesson that we can turn into our power, that we turn into our gifts, that we turn into our Chiron.
The positive aspect come with change.
Exactly.
Nice.
So as I go into the chamber of treasures with the soul piece will go around, look around, and have something that belongs to them that they end up bringing back, that they bring into the client, the primal soul.
Yeah.
And so it varies so much with these soul pieces. So
Okay.
sometimes it might be that the soul piece brings a light, like a candlelight or something, and there will be a message that comes with it too. So candlelight was a recent one, that it was bringing the light of the illumination, the ability to see I'm trying to think, sometimes I often forget what happened within each one, but
Right.
it could be the illumination of being able to see what the lesson brought, to be able to see the truth, to be able to see the love within, regardless of what you're doing in
Nice.
life, to see that light
Yeah,
within
'cause it's
yourself.
light, right.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Or it might be that it brings back a blanket, which is like safety and feeling secure,
Oh, okay.
and it's a feeling of comfort, a feeling
Makes
of
sense.
nurture.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Sometimes the things look a little bit random, and I'll first see it and I'm like, okay, what does this mean? And other
sense.
times they make a lot of sense.
Like
so,
a hammer.
Yeah, that's happened actually. Yeah.
I will beat this knowledge into you
No.
with this hammer.
That was not
That
the
was not
message.
it? Oh.
But I did have one that brought a hammer back and was able to fix whatever needed to be fixed, that
Yeah,
they
you
were
had a hammer.
clearing out any blocks that relating to be able to figure out the processes.
That's
of
how I
things.
fix
So,
things, is with a hammer.
It was interesting. So,
Fix anything with a hammer.
and oftentimes in the Chamber of Treasures, they might bring an animal back with them. Not always,
Oh.
but if they bring an animal back with them, usually that animal is to help the soul piece with the primal soul as they acclimate back into the wholeness, and to help facilitate the healing and the process of acclimating back together.
Like, to look over the piece, to watch over the piece kind of a thing?
Yeah,
Or-
well, it helps to if there's something that was being learned, to be able to learn it. It's a very protective thing. Usually the
Okay.
animals bring protection, safety, and security.
Oh, okay, all right.
When you bring a soul piece back, you need to really be gentle with yourself afterwards, because it is a very deep healing
deal,
process.
right. Yeah.
There's a lot that's going on physiologically, as well as emotionally, psychically, spiritually, as you're bringing back a part of yourself.
And I would imagine, it wouldn't all kick in right away, probably, right?
It's a process, yeah.
Yeah.
The soul piece, at the end of the session, I actually blow the soul piece into the person
Okay.
through the chakra that we started with the
Oh, right,
illumination,
right.
which we talked about last week.
Right.
So it's, as that chakra had been fully healed and opened, then
Yeah.
I can blow in the soul piece, I blow in whatever treasures and gifts that the soul piece brought back, and then I seal the energy and close it up so that the energy is balanced, and rotating in the right way, and nice and bright throughout the entire client. So the soul piece is in there, but it does take time, and it's a beautiful healing process.
Yeah.
And
It's not like it goes back and
everything's perfect in life.
and you're totally different.
Right. Yeah,
You
just
would-
like if you had a medical procedure, it takes some time to
To
heal,
heal
it takes
and-
some
yeah.
time to acclimate.
For it to balance and everything to come out. I would imagine because it's your soul, it would have to work through the phases of getting into your chemistry of who you are, and then once that changes, and then your consciousness changes, and then your emotions would change, things like that. Like it would have to walk through the steps and.
Yeah, to some extent, although one of the really nice things with it, and I do a lot of Reiki with it too throughout the entire process.
So you're healing through the whole thing.
Exactly, so it doesn't take as much as one would think. So with some types of therapies, sometimes it's a really long process and you have to open everything up, look at everything. It takes time and weeks or months. Sometimes with the process of Reiki, along with the soul retrieval, healing the soul before it comes into the body, it's a fairly speeded up, fairly quick process comparative to
So are you saying
what you might expect.
days instead of months?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
On occasion, you might,
Maybe
because
a week
habits
or
take
two.
time, it might take a few weeks in certain situations to have everything flow. But it's
general?
usually like days, a couple weeks maybe.
Oh, okay.
And
So
then
days
you're
to a
really
week.
seeing significant differences
Interesting, okay.
within your outlook. You're seeing significant differences with the flow of certain things as your outlook change, as you're taking different actions, moving forward in a more holistic way.
Yeah.
It's pretty quick.
Okay, that is pretty quick. I wouldn't expect that, so that's interesting.
Yeah, and part of the process is there is a little bit of homework that the person has to do afterwards because they're reacclimating and adjusting with the soul piece. And
Is that naturally part of the process, or is that what you do with the process?
no, this is natural. This is
Okay.
required by the shamans.
She loves to give homework about everything, so I was just checking.
I am a pretty strict teacher in my classes. But this was
Always
taught to
more.
me by my elder shaman
Okay,
and
so
passed
it's part
down
of the
through the
process.
lineage of the
Okay,
Blackfoot
all right,
tribe.
all right.
And so,
I can't hold you responsible for this.
Exactly. And so the person, the primal soul, needs to write a letter to the soul piece that's coming back in, acknowledging the presence of the soul piece, thanking it for coming back, maybe acknowledging the lessons that it's brought, and just being gentle with it and accepting it, writing it out. That you heard the story of the soul piece, that you're happy that it's come back to you, and then acknowledging the gifts that were brought back as well, because those gifts are something that the soul piece brings back into the primal soul to bring a good benefit, to bring a strong healing change. So you acknowledge that. If a power animal was brought back, you acknowledge that in the letter too. And then you have to read that letter, ideally aloud, but you have to read that letter for 7 days, every single day for 7 days. And if something comes to you, because your intuition is going to be guiding you through this, if something comes to you, maybe your soul piece tells you something, and you feel like you need to write something else onto the letter, then you should write that onto the letter, and you need to read the letter aloud again for a full 7 days until you haven't made any more changes.
Oh, interesting.
And then you burn the letter or you bury the letter, because anytime we create any kind of healing within us, we need to release it afterwards.
Okay.
Same thing like if you're wishing for something, you're doing some manifestation work, you want to bring something in, it's important to focus on it and then release it and let it go so that it can come back to you. If you hold on to the concept too long, then you get stuck in the trauma again of the whole concept, the concept of it.
Wanting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's important when you burn or release that letter or bury the letter, it's a way of releasing it, recognizing we are now one and the same, we are whole at the end of whenever the 7 days is that you no longer make it. So that's where it's like, a week or two, depending.
Okay, oh, okay, I got you. All
And then
right.
you're seeing significant changes.
And you're doing something to acknowledge it and accept it each day,
Feel
which
the
helps.
gratitude.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, nice.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get that, okay.
So that's pretty much the gist of it with
That's
soul
nice.
retrieval.
And then things change for people. And they
Mhm.
feel better, they feel more complete.
We're at whole. Illnesses sometimes are able to be reversed if that was the reason for it, if that was a core reason for
So
it,
if
or
it's-
maybe they lighten a bit.
So if it takes a couple weeks for one, let's say someone wanted to just keep doing them, you would do them what?
I would wait and space it out a little bit. At
Like
least,
one a month?
Yeah, yeah.
One every other month kind of a thing?
It varies so much with people.
Depending- okay,
It really can vary. Sometimes I'm guided to do another one 3 weeks later because I feel like that's there. If I see other pieces that are ready and waiting and calling to me when I'm doing it, then it might be 2 or 3 weeks later. But otherwise, it's like a month, maybe a
Can you-
couple or a few months.
Can you only do one piece at a time?
Not necessarily. Depends on what I'm guided. I have a couple times seen 2 pieces that I needed to bring back. I had an
But
instance.
you don't like have a bag of them at any time? You never like,
No.
oh yeah, here's the whole thing, and
No,
you just
because
like
then you're
Santa it?
No, then you're not going through the lesson. Then you're
Okay.
not really embracing and experiencing the whole journey.
Of each piece.
There's no way to acknowledge each piece if
Oh,
you're
right.
like lumping them
Right,
together.
right.
Hey.
Yeah. We're gonna grab a bunch of guys, and we're gonna heal them, and it's all gonna be, yeah, you gotta do, it kind of has to,
Honor and respect the
the
people.
same way they came out, they need to go back in, which is a little bit at a
Exactly.
time. Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Yeah, I have on occasion had unusual circumstances where, actually it was when I was working with you one time. I brought a soul piece back to you, but at the time I brought yours back, I saw the soul piece that belonged to somebody else.
Oh, I remember that.
Had
Yeah,
already
yeah.
passed, and
Yeah.
so I had to also bring back. I told him I was going to come back later, and he wanted to come now, so
So
I
you
brought
brought him
his soul
back,
piece
yeah.
back to him on the other side, and I
Right.
brought yours back to you.
Yeah, I remember
so-
that, yeah.
and unusual circumstances sometimes present themselves too.
But, so you just flow with however it plays out.
Whatever spirit tells me to do.
Nice,
Yeah.
because they hopefully know better than we do.
Yes,
Hopefully.
Yeah. So
Hopefully.
if you have any questions about this, if you want more information, if you're interested in having a soul retrieval done, let us know in the comments below. Message us. You can message us on Facebook. You can send us comments on YouTube. And we will look forward to seeing you next week. We should have probably broken this up into 3 sessions
Honestly,
instead
right? I'm
of
telling
2
you.
sessions. But thank you all for all of you who completed and watched to the end of this video. Give us a like on this video if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe button, please. Thanks. Have a great week, everyone.